Hi, I'm Justin. When I was 15 in 2004, I met the Duggar family for the first time and began attending church with them at their home. I became close friends with some of the oldest Duggar kids and many others in that circle. While I attended, Josh's patterns of abuse first surfaced, albeit in a small circle of fellow churchgoers. At the same time, the Duggars were starting to skyrocket in their fame and fortune, and worked to keep their problems at home from interfering with their newfound opportunities.
Welcome, friends. I'm really excited to sit down before bed and put this video together for you today, because a little less than a year ago, I came across this amazing podcast called I Pray You Put This Journal Away. The podcast is produced by a husband and wife team who go by Justin and Julia. Justin grew up in the Deep South, and he attended the Duggars church there as a fundamentalist Christian. He was once friends or maybe acquaintances with Josh Duggar, and also got to know a couple of his brothers pretty well. Back in 2015, when things started coming out about Josh Duggar, Justin says that he wanted to speak to the press about what he knew, but no one really seemed interested in it. So he went ahead and created this podcast, hoping to get out some of the information and what he considers to be negative things that were going on behind the scenes at the time that the supposed molestation of the sisters was taking place. Julia kind of acts as a sidekick or maybe even a therapist to Justin on the podcast. They seem to be a strong couple. They have left Christian fundamentalism, and they talk extensively about what Justin went through within the system when he was a kid. Justin shares that he had undiagnosed autism as a child and obviously still does as an adult. Justin reads entries from his journals from around 2005 to 2006, and he speaks a lot about a great pressure he felt from the church to be the perfect Christian. And he talks about how some of this fed into his tendency of his brain to want to put things into very perfect boxes. As you can imagine, it was likely pretty difficult and confusing for Justin to be growing up in this fundamentalist church in a very strict environment, not always understanding the rules, how they work. Basically, what Justin is describing is a very strict and sexually repressive upbringing. What I find so damaging about what Justin is bringing to the surface about this church that the Duggars attended is that although it's very sexually repressive, it also has a way of kind of throwing sex into the faces of the congregants, especially towards the children and the teenagers. And I'm sure the Duggar children experienced it as well, because there's such a fear in the church of all of the sins of the flesh. It's constantly being brought up. And one thing that Justin talks a lot about is that Josh Duggar is actually being put kind of on stage in front of the church, and he's being held accountable for these quote unquote sins of the flesh, even though nobody knows exactly what those sins are. The teenagers and the kids that are being exposed to it, they don't really know what the sins are that Josh is being punished for. Yet he's being put on stage in front of everyone, and Justin lets us know that it's being talked about among congregants that Josh has participated in these sins and that he needs to atone for them. I really like Justin, and he makes it clear that there's a personal cost that comes along with him sharing his story. He doesn't want to hurt people that he loves, and he tries to be careful about redacting people's names and just being really careful overall about what he says. But what he has to say specifically about Josh Duggar, he just makes it very clear that the issues he's seen with Josh Duggar are not just with Josh. They belong to the entire family, the church, and the fundamentalist movement he belonged to.
In my view, it is worth sharing my story in a personal and vulnerable way because it might find its way into the ears of people that need to hear it.
There are a couple of episodes of I Pray You Put This Journal Away available on YouTube, and I really encourage you to check them out, listen to them, and get a better idea of everything Justin has to say about what happened, what was going on with the Duggars during the time where the girls were coming forward and it was known in the church that Josh was behaving inappropriately at home. As I stated before, this is one of my favorite deep dives into looking into what was going on behind the scenes with the Duggar family. I'm not going to give all of the information here in this video. Again, I just really want to encourage you to check out Justin's podcast and just to be aware that there's this great resource out there for learning more about what was going on behind the scenes with the Duggars. Okay, so for now, friends, I'm actually heading off to bed. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me what I've gotten right or wrong with my opinions in this video, and let me know if you have already heard about I Pray You Put This Journal Away, or if you listen to it now, what you think about the podcast.